Let's Talk Ministry with Pastor Dennis Martin, where we talk everything and all things ministry.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today on today's podcast. This is Pastor Dennis Martin with Let's Talk Ministry. On this day, we talk everything ministry on this podcast. I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. It is a blessing to have you with us. You know, we started this journey not too long ago, and so many of you have reached out to us concerning ministry, and we thank you so much for those that have downloaded, those that have been a part of what we've been doing here. You know, every Wednesday night we do a live Let's Talk Ministry with Pastor Dennis Martin, a live stream on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Periscope, and on domartin.org. And I would love for you to be a part of our discussion on Wednesday nights. Well, tonight we've got a very special guest today on our podcast, Let's Talk Ministry, and he's going to be sharing with us some very important information and things. And I know you're going to be blessed as we listen today with our special guest. I'm going to have him to introduce himself to you, to the audience today. Bishop, please introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
Dr. Dennis Martin, thank you. I'm pleased to be with you, honored to be with you. You are one of those gifts to the body of Christ that keeps us in touch what's happening. So I'm honored to be here. I am Bishop Eugene Bellinger. I serve as the senior pastor of the Cathedral of the Covenant Church here in the city of Columbus, Ohio, and the presiding bishop of the Cathedral Covenant Fellowship Ministries.
Oh my God. And I know by, reading and following you a little bit on social media, that those are not just things that you have, titles or whatever, that you have a lot of those earned degrees, and some things you're very educated, and you're an educator. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I here's the deal, and it tickles people. I went to a top Presbyterian seminary in my like 17, 18 when I graduated from high school. I did not major in theology. I majored in psychology and theology because I went into it because I wanted to learn how to be what we call an industrial psychologist. My specialty in psychology was IEIO, industrial operation, industrial engineering, and understanding personality and personality profile and what makes a company run. If, for instance, do these lights work? What color stimulates people? And then I majored in theology as my second major to make sure to give me a good foundation in biblical history, biblical truth, because I wanted to be able to understand the Christian foundation of how the world came into existence, and then I also wanted to understand what the business principles were. And so that's how I started in school, in psychology and theology.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. That's something. So how long have you been in ministry, Bishop?
Wow. Now, this year I celebrate 50 years of being a believer. I got saved when I was 16, so I'm 66. I've been preaching between 45, maybe 50 years preaching, and 25 years being a bishop.
Oh, wow. Well, I tell you, we're grateful to have you with us tonight. And of course, I met you a couple of years ago. I was ministering, I think, here for Bishop House on a Sunday evening, and you were in our service, and I followed you on social media. And I wanted to have you on our podcast today, Let's Talk Ministry, because I've followed you, and I see that you're very interested in ministry, have a passion for ministry and ministers, and especially younger ministers coming up. And I've noticed in your posts recently, you've talked about some things dealing with domestic violence and stuff. And I want to just give you a little freedom to just talk about that, because sometimes we don't address elephants in the room. We don't address things like we should. And there's some things we have to address because it goes beyond the pulpit. It's not just a pulpit issue or matter. Sometimes it's other things. And we have to have people to address this, and knowing that you deal in those areas, not just from a theological standpoint, but also dealing with mental health and other things. I want to give you just sort of a freedom to talk about that.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity. Probably about 5.5 years ago, when there was a rash of suicide, depression breaking out in the church, I took an interest into why this was such a phenomenon with so many people talking about it. And then and I start dealing with some of these matters of depression, suicide, and took the study to understand genetic disorder, hormonal dysfunction, and what is it that's causing so much depression and so much sickness, dysfunction in the church. And the thing that woke me up, the second thing that woke me up, 6:30 one morning, Dr. Monday, that a young man called me up because I was talking about mental health on Facebook, and he said to me, it's about 6:30, called me up, came downstairs in my office. He said, Bishop, had I not seen your post on Facebook, I believe I would have committed suicide. Then my face did about face, because this is one of the premier young preachers in the country. I won't even call his name. Go to a premier organization, premier bishop. But something happened where he felt like he didn't want to live anymore. And so I stepped my game up to really seek God and seek those professionals that were around me. How do I approach this? Because basically I was dealing with it from a literary surface point of view. Now here I go as a clinician to go do assessment. So we work the schedule out, go into this church to speak to his people, because people who under depression and frustration and aggravation, whenever they under anything that's suppressing them or that's hurting them and going through some past hurts, they have a tendency to project it to that people. So I had to go into that church, speak to him, and then speak to his people to relieve them of that spirit that has been imposed upon them. And then after that, then I realized that what God was calling me to do was to dispel the ignorance, the stigma. And this is not a slant. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Pentecostal, apostolic, holiness, sanctified boy that was raised up in Newark, New Jersey, in my church and around the Church of God in Christ, or PAW, Young Holy Church, and realized there was a lot of things that we put the charge to demons, when it really is just a disorder of some sort, a dysfunctional gene, or some traumatic act that causes people to react certain ways. So I took myself on a course to study this and to get into these proactive, preventive, and protective measures to protect not just our pastors, but when pastors were committing suicide, and then they had their wives that were committing suicide and kids of 7, 8 years old. But what I noticed that they were always talking about the pastors who have 500, 1,500, 2,000 or 3,000 members that were committing suicide because of depression, but they never said anything about the people who have small membership or who were not well known. Then it tells me there's a group that's not really been addressed. So that was one of the first things that got me into this, because I had a concern about pastors, their families, and leadership, and the membership. Dealing with depression and not understanding what the stigmas were, that we place a lot of things on the devil rather than trying to help people get therapeutic help.
Yeah, I agree with you. I did a thing, I think, 2 weeks ago about when we suffer in silence in ministry, and I recognize that it's as you said, that it's not always just the thing of just praying for people and praying for them to get delivered, no matter if they're pastors or not. We really don't, it's a drawback for us many times to say we need to go and sit down and get some professional help or talk to someone. It makes it seem like that we don't believe in the power of God. But I think sometimes we do need people to go down and go and sit down and talk to somebody that's maybe disconnected from the whole situation to be able to get some professional help.
Right. Well, see, the other thing that I noticed, that there are a lot of Christian psychologists, Christian medical doctors. We got Christian surgeons and Christians in this field. And so the great thing, we got faith, we got facts, and we got the power of God. And so I surrounded myself with those kind of people, and working with some neurologists and some neurosurgeons to help me to understand it better. Because what I do, I go in and do an assessment, I do an evaluation, to have a conversation, then I recommend them to the therapist or to the specialist that can go deeper than I will ever be able to go. But what happens is that especially in the black church, from historically, the black preacher was the only one that the people in the church trusted when they got sick, before they went to white doctors or white physicians. Right. And so I realized that pastors are only going to trust who they can trust. And I had to take their hands and lead them to the right people that will bring them help and healing and hope.
Well, Bishop, I tell you, I really appreciate you bringing the consciousness and the conversation to social media, especially for those, because, of course, we have seen within the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of suicides. We've seen a lot of people not only hurting themselves, but hurting others. And
Right.
so you are correct about it. When you think about it, I think most of us don't think like that, that we do have some Christian people that are professionals outside of our four walls of church. They actually are professionals in those areas that can help us. And we can have that conversation and go and talk to them because, if you need help, you just need help. There's no way around it. If you need help, you need it, and you got to get it from somebody.
Right. See, and I always ask that we'll trust the dentist. We'll trust even a doctor for some physical thing. We'll trust the mechanic. We'll trust the dry cleaner. We'll trust the bakery. But when it comes down to this whole piece of mental health and our psychology and sociological dysfunction, we have a real serious problem. I mean, I would trust a painter who I never heard about based on recommendation come paint my entire house. But I won't trust a Christian doctor because we think that it's of the devil. And when that doctor is coming with faith and facts and to bring us to a level of wholeness. So we got a lot to learn, but thank God things are changing for the best for the church.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that I pray and trust that when people listen at this podcast and as we keep talking about this, I pray and trust that it would really help and inspire and encourage because I have to tell you, I remember years ago as a little boy, we heard of people committing suicide, but it seems like now it gets a little more heavy. And, sometimes it's, as you said something earlier that really caught my attention, sometimes it could be something in the genes. It could be something that's really not connected to so much the ministry or the pressure of ministry. Some of these issues may have been something that before people even got into the ministry.
Right. Well, here's the thing. When we looked at most, especially the young pastor that committed suicide a few weeks ago, we found out that he was already in counseling. And what happened is when they say things like this, Dr. Martin, that the church, it brings so much pressure and brings so much hurt and pain. People have these genetic disorder, these dysfunction long before they got in church. Had it not been in church, it would have happened on a job. Somebody could have cut in front of them. And so I don't agree that church causes people to commit suicide, that church causes depression. Yeah, it brings frustration. But that disorder in their life, with their land long before they got to the church, it's a dormant gene that just woke up because of the activity of pressure and demands on a life, which goes to another piece. And then when I hear people talking about church hurt and people left the church because the church hurt, the church does not hurt people. It's people in the church. But you notice, which is comical, that people get hurt on their job. They don't leave their jobs.
Exactly.
People get hurt here in school. Don't leave. So they blame and call it church hurt. People are going to get hurt wherever their individuals are. So we should tend to put the blame on the wrong thing and the wrong people. But I think church, the work of the church or working in church can aggravate a gene that's been laying dormant. We've been created with this harmonious thing called fight and flight. It's an animal instinct that whenever an animal is approached, the animal hormones kicks in to either to fight or flight, fight it or either run from it. And the same nature is in human beings, that whenever we're confronted with something, we either stand to try to fight it or we run and flight from it.
Wow, Bishop. I tell you, this is. I think this is very interesting, and I talked to you a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about this, and one of the things that you brought to my attention, and I think it's very true, is in many of our conferences, convocation, conventions, in our classes and things like this, this is a subject that is really never dealt with or brought up.
Right. Wait, and this is why I applaud you, because I keep saying, at this stage, any church, convocation, or conference, that does not have a component for mental health, have a component for people who deal with mental health issues to help us understand, is missing out. We did a class a few months ago called Mental Health First Aid. It's a course that's offered all across the country in every state in the city. It's an 8-hour class. If you get with the right people, they'll split it in half because nobody's going to sit there all day. But what it does, it teaches your leaders, the pastors, how to see mental health disorder, when you can see depression, when you can see frustration, anxiety, and know what to do and call the right people. And so the church needs to know that everybody who jumping up and down or who rolling on the floor or whatever is not necessarily under the unction of the Holy Ghost. There's something that's aggravating that physicality. And what we got to understand again, that sometimes I believe in the power of God. But one of the things I tell people is that the absence of the physicality or the enormity does not necessarily mean you're totally healed. What we did, we prayed for the thing we physically saw, physically felt. But we suppress some things, and down the road, it comes back out. But I agree with you. Every church, every conference, convocation ought to have something to offer to people so they can know what the signs are. They can know what the motions are, what the thoughts are, what the patterns are, so they know how to seek the right kind of, yes, pray and ask God, but seek help from the right type of people.
My, well, Bishop, I really appreciate it again. Now let's take a little shift here. I
Okay.
noticed the last couple of weeks you've been posting, and especially to pastors, young pastors, and even those of us that are older, concerning how we deal with domestic violence in that's separate from the pulpit, because sometimes people look at what we do from the pulpit, and that's a great thing. But we have lives outside of the pulpit, and we have to deal with families and wives and husbands and other things. And you've been dealing with that a lot lately. And I was really inspired to, have this conversation with you so we can get it out, because it's a very important conversation. I think when we were coming up, we were just taught, we were trained as young men that you don't put your hand on women. And I know society, that's a whole different ball game today. That's something that is switched. But just talk about that a little bit, because I felt your passion on that as you talked about it and as you posted even earlier.
Well, one of the things, domestic violence is an act or is an aggressive tendency or is one of those personality disorders because of mental health. But what happened is that as I listen to people and they bring me in, it starts to tell me different avenues we need to be addressed. And the reason that I was addressing it so hard for the last couple of weeks, even today, is that there's a young lady, she's a pastor's wife. The husband has assaulted her. He pastors a church. He abused her. He hit her in the eye, bit her finger off. She goes to court, and he stands up and tells the judge, I didn't do that. She did it to herself. And the judge said, are you crazy? And what he did, he gathered some of the pastors, part of his communion that he's part of in the city, and they rose up against her and say to other people, don't believe her, she's a liar. It's similar to what's happening now with Judge Kavanaugh and this whole thing about this alleged attempted rape. And the same thing with Anita Hill, though. When you got a good old boys club, they come to the rescue. And what happened is I know this young lady as a first lady, and it hit me because she was one of my former graduate students when I worked at Ohio State about 25 years ago. She's from South Carolina. She's raised in a good family. And she sat down and talked to my wife and I about what he did to her, how he treated her. And so I had to go on the bandwagon again, because I'm seeing a lot of young pastors, these millennials who get into marriages and get into ministry and doing things they should not do. Like you said, we were taught, don't put your hands on a woman. But this generation and some people in the last 10 or 15 years just don't care. But I got a problem when you beat on women. I watched my stepfather beat my mother when I was 5, 6 years, 7 years old, didn't know any better. I sit there and watched it. And he was an alcoholic, beat her, pushed her against the wall. If there's anything that disturbs me when a man put his hands on a woman, but especially a pastor, and he thinks it's okay to get in the pulpit on Sunday, that's really psychotic. That's a psychosis. That's a demon there now. And because when you see these wonderful black women who are tormented by black preachers, and he get all his buddies, and then he want to blast her name. And I'm saying to these young preachers, keep your hands off these girls. I mean, I dealt with a case a few months ago at a major Christian school in this country where a young man slapped a woman. He turned around and said she tried to hit him with a car. Man, what you should have done, they got away. And then he beat on her, and now she's hanging around him, trying to be part of the group. And I said to him, I said, man, you got anger problem. It's just a matter of time before you explode on another young lady. But sometimes women can be hurt so bad that these men play the game and make them feel like they cannot make it without them. But like the old folks say, the devil is a lie. But this domestic violence, it's straight across the board. I mean, there are women that beat on men, there are kids that beat on kids, and it's just a mess, man, in our community, in our schools, especially in our homes, and especially in the church. It just, people won't talk about it.
So, Bishop, do you think that it is something so much that we've got to do? I just think that the church, we have to do a better job. You know, sometimes we don't like to talk about issues because when we bring them up, you get so much pushback from it. But sometimes you have to do that. I said something the other day, and I really believe this strongly, and that is I don't believe in people that always get on and rebuke a lot of people on social media and other stuff, but they don't rebuke or correct their friends that may be doing the same thing or something worse. I just believe if you're gonna rebuke people, you got to be able to rebuke everybody. And so if I've got a friend that was doing what you're talking about, I just wouldn't say, well, I'm gonna rebuke this group and leave that. No, I would talk to him also, because we really got to do a better job in holding each other, I think, accountable in some of these things. And you are correct. I've been married, this year would be 39 years in December. And
congratulations, man.
Thank you. And I can say in 39 years, without even a flinch or any fallback, that I have never hit my wife. I've never hit her, never slammed her against the wall, anything. You know, if I've got upset about something, I would just leave the house and come back, and we would always make a pact that we would never let the sun go down on our wrath. We would talk about things and discuss things as grown people, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, I do think we need to call it in order, man, because what happened is we cannot allow this to have a past to this. We cannot allow even our friends. I mean, I think there's, I tell people there's four sides to every story. The man's side, the woman's side, the book side, and God's side. So let's decide on how we're going to follow this thing and deal with this matter, because God sees all of it, and there's a book. Sometimes, here's the thing, sometimes the misfortune to read a lot of the mental health and psychological psychosis book of disorders is that it can tell you something that can give you a false assumption of another person, of people. And you have to be real careful how you read into it. But I think that we're called to bring this to pass. That's why I applaud you again for making this a national agenda, because it has to be happen, because our little girls are watching our fathers beat on their mothers, and they think that their boyfriend's supposed to beat on them, or the little boys are seeing their fathers beat on their mothers, and they go out beating on little girls, man. So it has to stop, man, because if we don't deal with this and teach our teenagers how to keep your hands to yourself, and it's simple. See, domestic violence is not just physical, but it's verbal, it's financial. I mean, people attack each other in various ways, besides just putting their hands on, that have the same repercussion, which bring people into depression and loneliness where they want to take their own lives themselves.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you, Bishop. I think we got to do a better job, and I appreciate you for, bringing the conversation. I know that's not the easiest thing to do when I see you on social media and doing the lives and the streams. It's like, man, that's not something people want to really hear about, especially if you're dealing, and you said it again, it's straight across the board. It could be male or female, but especially when we're dealing with the clergy or the pulpit, that is something that most of the time you don't want to, you don't think you would have to deal with it, but you have to. And I think sometimes the reason it is, And this is just my opinion. Sometimes I think the reason for that being is because of the fact that everyone is not in the pulpit because they were called to the pulpit. Some of them they're in the pulpit because it's lucrative for them, or they
Right.
get to have a crowd or whatever it may be. And if you're in it for the wrong reason, sometimes then you start trying to save what you have built more than actually realizing and recognizing that you need help.
Wow.
And that is a problem. Sometimes we're more concerned about saving face, saving our names, saving what we built, than to just say, look, I actually got a problem. I need some help. That and I'll say in defense of sometimes people that do that, I guess, is the church has not made it, has not opened that door for us many times to be open and transparent when you need help, because some things happen. I remember a young lady said to me, one of my Caucasian sisters said to me about 2 years ago, she called me and she said, I need you to pray for me because she got a divorce, her and her husband got a divorce. And she said to me, I feel so lost. I said, well, what's wrong? She said, well, they blackballed me at church. I can't really go there anymore. And everybody that I thought was my friend, they sort of put me out, and, I'm just sort of lost. I don't know what to do. And so talking with her, praying with her and stuff. And the church has not opened that up, even in the areas of, a lot of areas we haven't opened up for people to be able to sit down. And I think sometimes, Bishop, that causes more problems, because if you don't have nowhere to go and we don't take these avenues that you suggested to us with Christian professionals, if we don't take those avenues and go in those places and get the help we need, then we're so afraid that if I do this, what is the backlash that the church is going to give me? Because the church can be brutal when they want to be, when something happened, and we're not talking about domestic violence, but just anything. The church can really come after you, and that's how we built it. So I think we've got to make a way where we can open up for this conversation, and for people that really need help and want help to be able to come without feeling that the church is going to attack them. Because, I wouldn't say the church, you corrected us, people in the church doing that. We should be able to have that conversation. I really think we got to be able to have it.
Well, here's the thing that I share with you. I was appointed on a interfaith council at Ohio State University. I got assigned to work as a co-chair, but ended up being chair of writing a vision for 65,000 students and 20 to 30,000 faculty, the vision, mission, and goals and objectives on how to mingle faith together. And one of the things I said to a lot of the evangelicals that were sitting around the table, I said, first of all, y'all are old trying to come up with ideas to get 65,000 students here, and none of them are at the table. You don't know what they're dealing with. And those kids go with so much depression. I mean, you have doctors at universities that are committing suicide, and professors are committing suicide because things are not going well. And so I got pulled into another area of mental health and suicide and disorder, because you're talking about the church is one area, you're talking about the government, now you're talking about a major university that now I sit there dealing with a multiplicity of personalities. You got the Buddhists, the Hindus, you got the Presbyterians, then you got the LGBTQ community, that I got to be able to make them feel comfortable in that environment at that university. But it goes back to what you said again. God is strategically putting us in places to bring ministry on different levels to everyone who need it. And that's had become the new assignment for me, man. I don't do much talking about it, because I think that some things you kind of keep, because people don't understand how you and I can sit at a board when you got all kinds of cultures sitting there. We come to the minister to the whole man, not the specific sin in their life, the whole man. And so what God puts us in a place, when you got 65,000 students and 20 to 30,000 faculty, you don't know who's coming in that group. But my job is to do one thing, and this is the thing you said that jumped out at me. They need to have a safe space, safe place, and a safe haven where they can come and talk about their issues without being torn down. So we're creating these things at the university called safe space, safe haven, and safe places where they can just come and meditate and talk to people without being ashamed, and they're going to be protected. And that's what people need today, where they can feel like they can talk to their pastor or someone professional, and none of their business will ever be out in the street. People just need to feel they can be comfortable coming to the church.
Yes, sir. Well, Bishop, I really appreciate you coming tonight. And what I'm going to ask you to do, first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to give us your information. I know you're on Facebook and probably on other social medias, your website. Give us that information. And then I'm going to ask you, as we get ready to close this podcast out, I'm going to ask you to pray for those that may need to have prayer, pray for them. And also maybe in your last remarks, after you give us that information and before you pray, just sort of share with them what you would, as you go in and do assessments on different things, what would you recommend for them? What would be your recommendation for many that may be suffering and maybe they haven't had anyone to talk to, or maybe it's been a silent thing, or maybe they've even had some outbursts of stuff. Just what you would recommend to them, and then pray for us.
Well, you can find me on Facebook, Bishop H. Eugene Bellinger on Facebook. Let me see. I'm trying to remember. I'm on Instagram. Twitter, you can get me at Bishop H. Eugene. What's the other one? Instagram at Bishop H.E.B. That's where you'll find me. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Just look me up, and I'm there. If you want to send me a note, go on Facebook. You get all the information there on Instagram, and drop me a note in the inbox, and we do what we can do. One of the things we do, again, we got teaching sessions where we come in and teach and train churches and talk about how a pastor and his whole staff can understand this process. We'll come in, and then we'll do it at the next step. If they really want to move to another level, we do what we call an assessment. We just sort of look and see what's there. We do an evaluation. Then we make a recommendation. We sit down with the leadership, say, tell me where you want to go. We find the right people that fit the right church, that fit the right model, because everybody can't work in your church. And so our job is to train leaders and help them to build the infrastructure and to empower them and to help those who are coming through difficulties. And then we recommend to pastors who may be listening, take the class of mental health first aid, and they'll bring some people in. If you need some help, you can get to me on Facebook, Instagram, or reach out to Dr. Martin. He'll get hold of me quicker than anybody can, because he has my number. And then we'll recommend somebody in your area to assist you. That's what we do now. And I say this, it's comical, because years ago I was raised up in Newark, New Jersey. I used to preach from B all the way up to A flat and drop back down at F.D. Washington. That's what we did 20 years ago. We were anointed to do it. But as I got older, I realized that God has perfected my gift for preaching. So there's nothing I can do to improve my preaching, really. I study and do this. But then I started saying, wait a minute, God, what is my next level that you will have me? And I throw this in because I want people to understand that I do more than just church and mental health. I'm a referee. I referee basketball for the state of Ohio, middle school and high school. Yeah. And that gives me another area of ministry, because referees and officials and those kids, they're going through some mental health issues. And when they see me on the court and know that I'm a pastor or bishop, it's just another avenue for them to have a sense of release. So my job is to bring peace and harmony. And so this opportunity like this, I enjoy, but I applaud you again, Dr. Dennis Martin, for doing this. I mean, you're the exception. I must say, you are the exception to take a bold step. So wait a minute, I want my people healthy. And we talk about that thing, the health of the church, emotionally, financially, physical. I want to have a healthy church? So I applaud you, man. I applaud you for doing this, and I'm honored to be on this program with you.
Well, Bishop, we appreciate you being here. Please pray for us. Say a prayer for us as we get ready to leave. And I pray and trust everyone that has heard it. Please get in touch with Bishop and follow him on these social media platforms. I know he has a website. If you go to Facebook, you can find his website also. Go and follow him. And, I believe that we have to connect with people. As I've gotten older, I found out, I thank God that I was brought up around a lot of older people, and some things when they were sharing at that time, I did not understand. But as I've gotten older, I really, really get it. I got it. And so we got to hang around, and we've got to prepare ourselves. I agree with you, Bishop. When I was, and I still do it now, but even at my church on Sundays, my members can tell you there's some Sundays I don't do any what we call hooping or anything. I'm just teaching and trying to prepare them for life outside of the four walls of church. And I think that that's so important that we not get caught up in just the style of what we do, but also in the substance that we bring and what we've got to deal with people. I believe that a lot of people are the last stop. We're the last stop they're going to make on their way to eternity, or either on their way to make a decision. And I say this before you pray. I had a young man to call me 2 weeks ago, and when he called me, he said, I need you to pray for me. I said, well, what's going on? He said, I'm about to do something stupid. I said, well, what are you getting ready to do? He said, I don't have a job. I'm supposed to do an interview and go in for something on Tuesday. He said, but today is Friday. I don't have no money. I can't feed my family, and I'm about to do something stupid. I said, well, what you getting ready to do, really? He said, I'm gonna go out. I said, I know you're not finna go rob nobody. He said, yeah, I got to feed my family. I said, no, don't do that. That's because if you did do that, then what you're going to do is you're going to end up, and your family's going to be in more trouble, because if you get caught or something happens or you get killed, then you leave your family. That's selfish of you. And he said, yeah, you. So I prayed with him, and I said, listen, I'm going to send you. So I sent him some money, and, so he can get his family some food. And he called me back, I think it was like Wednesday. And he said, I appreciate you. He said, I got the money. I went and bought me some sandwich meat and stuff and fed my family. I didn't do anything stupid. He said, and I went and applied, got the job. And so I'll be working. I think is that Friday he was going to start working. So those are the type of things we have to look at because I'm glad he called me, because he was getting ready to go do something. But we've got to have it open enough where people can have confidence and trust enough to call us. And of course, I know his name, and I would never put that information out. I was just sharing the event that happened, but people have got to be able to trust us. And that goes back to some of the things you were talking about. We never know what will trigger a thing. You would think that triggered just that for him to say, I'm finna go do it now. But because he called it and I talked with him, he didn't do it. So that was a blessing.
Wow, and that's an awesome testimony. Those are the kind of things that people don't know that we do that saves a life, not just spiritual, but physical and immortality. I mean, that's the kind of thing that people don't know that you do, that we do, and especially that you did that. You stopped them perhaps going to jail. I mean, and I think the fact that you told him that if you go out and do something stupid, you either going to get killed or get locked in jail, and now your family lost with nothing at all. But that's a smart move, man. Listen. I commend you on that. I do. Those are the things we do. Those are the things we do. The people don't know what we do, man, but I applaud you for it, man. I really
sir.
do. You know?
Well, Bishop, close us out in prayer. And then, again, thank you so much for being with me tonight. I know that you're a busy man, but I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Listen, for you, man, you got carte blanche for me because you honor me and bless me. Father, we thank you for your kindness, your goodness, your grace, your greatness, and all of the goodness that you're giving to us. Thank you for this time of sharing with Dr. Dennis Martin, this opportunity that we were allowed to share ministry beyond the pulpit, ministry beyond the four walls, ministry even beyond what the Bible may define in the contextuality of those who preach. But we thank you for this opportunity. May those who listen, those who hear will reach out and understand who we are and what we've been called to do, that their life cannot end now. Their life is not over. That the best, not that the best is yet to come, the best has already come. The fact that they can hear and understand has come already to give them direction. Now save and fill with the precious Holy Spirit, give direction. God honor Dr. Dennis Martin. Fill his church, give him everything he needs for this platform. Continue to bless he and his family. And thy name we ask. Amen. It is so and it is done.
Amen. Thank you so much, Bishop. And those of you that are listening, don't forget, please go follow Bishop. He'll be a blessing to you. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to share this. Don't forget to download it so you can hear it. Many of you download it. Let someone else hear it. Let someone else be a part of our podcast. Let's Talk Ministry with Pastor Dennis Martin. Thank you so much for being a part. Bishop, you have a wonderful time. God bless you. Thank you again for being with us.
Thanks for joining Pastor Martin. Visit us at www.dlmartin.org or email us at rrcdmartin@gmail.com.